and I think that I have the ground locked up, and then that card, it's reminiscent of one of my favorite cards of all time, a Johnny Call with the Pride. You think you got the ground locked up, and then they whack you for $1 million in the air.
Absolutely. So it looks like our players are ready down to battle. We've got Todd Stevens, who is 18th on our list. Ross Merriam is 27th on our leaderboard. So they both came into this tournament with 1 bye. They're currently 4-0, Blue-Red Twin versus Naya Company. Looks like Ross Merriam has won the die roll. It's on the play. He's going to fetch a Steam Vents with his Misty Rainforest and cast Preordain, which is something that we see a lot of these Blue-Red Twin decks do, and Serum Visions, not Preordain. And I think that's something that's just pretty standard. These Twin decks are going to keep a lot of hands just on the power of Serum Visions.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, all they want to do is just set up for the future turns. In this matchup, basically we're going to see Todd Stevens with Naya Company being the aggressor. His deck has a lot of creatures, and he's likely going to come onto the board early. And he's really looking to get some sort of beatdown plan on, and then hopefully have something like a Dromoka's Command or Path to Exile to break up his opponent's combo while he just keeps beating down on the ground. So Ross is going to be looking to kind of control Todd for a little bit and then find a good spot to stick Twin.
And as you see here, Todd, whose tie actually looks better than mine, I'm a little jealous.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. I like yours.
Was able to lead on an Arid Mesa into a untap Stopping Grounds and cast a Noble Hierarch. Very important so we can get out of the gates early. Ross just has a basic on and passes back, and we'll see what Todd has. Now, I imagine Ross is wanting to be able to remand something here, but if Todd happens to have a Loxodon Smiter, that could just be bad news for Ross Merriam.
Yeah. Knight of the Reliquary, though, not quite Smiter, frequently bigger, but a little more easy to remand, so that's going to get remanded. And this is really what Ross wants to do. He just wants to trade mana, dig deeper in his deck. Remand is just a card that is custom made for the Blue-Red Twin plan.
Absolutely. You just want to kind of stop your opponent from doing what they're doing for a little bit of time until you can 1-2 punch them with a Pestermite or Deceiver Exarch and the Splinter Twin card.
And it's really interesting comparing Remand to a card like Mana Leak, which is just the other 2 mana counterspell. And a lot of times you'll see in a control deck where you want to counter something and have it really answered, you'll play Mana Leak. But Ross Merriam, he's not really looking to answer things. He just wants to delay them. And digging deeper into his deck is a lot more important than actually answering it.
Yeah, like he doesn't care if Todd spends the next turn recasting that Knight of the Reliquary. So on Ross's turn, he's just going to play a Desolate Lighthouse and snap back a Serum Visions just to try and dig a little deeper into his deck. He did go top and bottom with the Scry. Looks like he does have a Deceiver Exarch in his hand and a Splinter Twin. So at this point, he just needs to set up a point where he can put that on the battlefield and then untap and win. And
what's nice about this play that Ross made is because he has a Snapcaster Mage out, he can start to put pressure on Todd Stevens in 2 ways. Now he has a way to start chipping away at Todd's life total and can threaten burning him out if his life total gets too low. But while that's happening, Todd still has to manage the possibility of a Splinter Twin killing him.
Absolutely. So it looks like Todd is just going to redeploy that Knight of the Reliquary, play a Wooded Foothills and pass. It does not look like he has a Path to Exile in his hand, but he does have a Lightning Bolt and a Dromoka's Command, and he can use that command to break up the combo if it happens to come down to it. Ross is just going to play a Scalding Tarn for his turn, and from the looks of it, he has a lot of options. He could have used the Roast to take care of that Knight of the Reliquary, but I think he's just going to sit back and try and put a 1-4 or a 2-1 flyer onto the battlefield on Todd's end step.
Yeah, I think Ross wants to get that Pestermite onto the board just so that he can threaten the Twin. I mean, ideally, he just wants to set himself up in a way so that at any given moment that Todd taps out, that Ross can just go for the win.
Absolutely.
And so if Ross develops his mana a little bit more and gets a Dispel, then he can even fight through something.
So we see here Todd is just going to find a Temple Garden tapped with his Wooded Foothills. Going to draw a card here for his turn, and let's see what he does. Now he does have is that a 5/5 Knight of the Reliquary?
Yeah.
It's not very small.
Ooh, looks like it's going to be 6/6 soon with that fetch land that just got played.
He does have a Voice of Resurgence, which is very good. That's going to force Ross Merriam's hand here.
And this really displays the power of the Naya Company. I mean, the Knight of the Reliquary is a 6, or potentially a 6/6. If he wants to activate the Knight of the Reliquary, he could even go up to a 7/7. The Voice of Resurgence, the back end of it, is really, really powerful. And it's really showing how Todd Stevens just puts a lot of power and toughness onto the board very, very quickly. And he's not going to give Ross a lot of time to set up a clean twin combo.
Now, it looks like Ross might have a Dispel in his hand along with that Splinter Twin. So at this point, he's really just going to need to survive, have his Deceiver Exarch survive through this turn so he can untap, play a land, and try and twin. What's a little scary is hopefully he doesn't try and fetch on Todd's end step and leave himself without any mana so that he loses his Deceiver Exarch to something like Dromoka's Command, which I believe is in Todd's hand. So let's see what happens here.
And even still, I believe Todd has a Path to Exile and the Dromoka's Command in his hand, so he can even potentially fight through the Dispel.
So it looks like we have an activation of Knight of the Reliquary.
Getting the forest, though, does not leave him open to that play, so it doesn't seem like he's angling for that.
Well, he does have the Noble Hierarch, so he can get.
Well, he needs 2 white, right?
Yeah.
So I think he's activating his Knight, and he cracked his fetch land for a forest, and now he's activating his Knight to change his forest into something that likely is going to produce white mana, so he can cast Dromoka's Command and Path to Exile. And there's a land that taps for white.
Well, there we go. So he does have a Horizon Canopy off of that Knight of the Reliquary activation. So let's see how Todd decides to play the rest of this turn.
And Voice of Resurgence is just a tough card to play against. I mean, one of the advantages of this blue-red twin deck is it can play predominantly at instant speed. It's almost all instants and creatures with flash. But Voice of Resurgence is a really good card against that game plan. Now, some of the times, Ross will just be able to ignore the tokens and combo off. But if he's not able to combo off, those tokens are a really big deal.
Okay, so it looks like Voice is still on the stack here. Oh, no, there's a Noble Hierarch, or there's another Knight of the Reliquary. So I guess the Voice resolved. I think that...
And this is probably going to be it, because all he's got is the Path to Exile, and Ross has the Twin. Or
and the Dispel.
Yeah. Wow, and that's it. So basically, Todd was in a pretty good position there. I think he just, he can't really know that his opponent is able to go for Twin with Dispel back up there. Also, Todd needs to make sure that he gets enough pressure on the board. If all he has is a Knight of the Reliquary attacking, that might not be quite enough. So I can understand why he wanted to commit another big fatty to the board.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Although, to be honest, there is a little merit with just only having the Knight of the Reliquary and the Voice of Resurgence, and then sitting back on your 2 answers to the Splinter Twin combo, and then the next turn you can play another Knight of the Reliquary. Once you have 2 of them on the battlefield, and even only with 1, they get real big fast.
Yeah.
That particular Knight was already up to like a 7/7 or an 8/8, and he even had a Noble Hierarch in play to give it Exalted. So the game's going to be over in a couple attacks.
Yeah, I agree. And given the fact that Ross not only cast 1 Serum Visions, but 2, you could probably expect that he kind of had the hand that he wanted to have.
For sure. Now let's take a look at the sideboards here. Ross does have a Dispel, a Negate, a Roast, a Pyroclasm, an Anger of the Gods, 2 Ancient Grudge, 2 Blood Moon, 1 Rending Volley, a Teferi Mage of Zalfir, 1 Jace Architect of Thought, 2 Kuranos God of Storms, and an Izzet Staticaster.
So I think one thing that's going to be interesting about this is the Naya Company deck doesn't have the best way to fight against Blue-Red Twin. So I think Todd is unlikely to mount a lot of disruption. So Ross might want to just stick to the Blue-Red Twin combo and only board in maybe a Dispel or a Negate to fight through the small amount of disruption that Todd's likely going to have. The other thing, though, is Ross can go on a more controlling route and have Jace, Kuranos, Izzet Staticaster, Rending Volley, Anger of the Gods. The thing that can be tricky about that is we saw that Todd's creatures can get so big that controlling them with red base removal can be a little bit of a dicey matter. So I would expect that Ross will stick to his Twin combo, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of these control elements find their way into the deck.
Absolutely. As far as on Todd Stevens' side with Naya Company, we have a Rending Volley, 2 Domri Raid. Big ups to my boy Domri Raid. And we got a Stony Silence, 2 Spellskite, an Elspeth Knight Errant, 2 copies of Kitchen Finks, an Ancient Grudge, 2 Engineered Explosives, a Grim Lavamancer, and 2 copies of Blood Moon. What do you think's going on with Todd?
So I think the cards that are going to come in are Rending Volley, because it's just an uncounterable way to break up the combo. Spellskite, we've talked about this before, it's an all-star against Blue-Red Twin, and you can play it before they combo off, so maybe you can sneak it underneath a remand. And then the other card that can be really good is Engineered Explosives, because it can also, save you from imminent doom.
Absolutely. So Ross Merriam has made it to the top 8 of a handful of our invitationals.
Oh, he's a good player, yeah.
He is a very good player. But you also get some pretty sweet perks for winning Invitational. Not only do you get 30 SCG points, but you also get your likeness on your very own token.
Which is the greatest bragging rights in the world.
Absolutely. So we currently have Alex Bistecki, who won the Invitational, the Season 3 Invitational, and in New Jersey, and he's the Germ token, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, I believe he has a bit of a science background, so he kind of wanted to be a little bit of a mad scientist in his token, and this is, perfectly fitting.
Absolutely. So you can get this limited edition invitational token at all of our opens, for all of our open participants, all classic participants, and in all orders from StarCityGames.com.
Yeah. Another thing about Alex is he's a super nice guy. He's a judge, and that's what he spends most of his time doing, but he's a very skilled Magic player. And during Pro Tour Vancouver, he was an extra nice guy and let me stay at his hotel because I hadn't booked one and it was really expensive there.
Yeah, well, it sounds like he was a real nice guy.
Oh, yes, super nice. I like him a lot.
Now we also have Caleb Shearer got his own token by winning the Season 4 Invitational in Las Vegas, and he is a Storm counter. So he is known for playing Storm and Legacy, and now he has his very own Storm counter.
Which is really cool because we've never had a Storm counter before. And this is one of the things that's cool about winning an Invitational is you get to take some of your personality, some of your creativity, and kind of immortalize it and share it with the rest of the community.
Absolutely, and you can receive a limited edition Invitational token, again, at all open participants, all classic participants, and in all orders from StarCityGames.com. And the Caleb Shears token will be giving out January 29th at noon Eastern Standard Time on the website, and you can get them in person in Atlanta for the Open during the Oath of the Gatewatch release weekend. So as we go in here to Game 2, Ross Merriam on Blue Red Twin against Todd Stevens on Naya Company. It looks like Todd is on the play. He started out with a Windswept Heath and passed. Ross just played a Scalding Tarn, and it looks like Todd is just fetching up a Temple Garden tapped on Ross's end step, undoubtedly to untap and play something like Voice of Resurgence on his turn, hopefully.
Yeah, he really wants to have a creature here. The fact that he didn't have one on turn 1 is a little unfortunate. He doesn't have a ton of 1-drops. I believe he just has the Noble Hierarchs and Wild Nikado, but he really wants to have something here on turn 2, and preferably a Voice of Resurgence or maybe a Spellskite.
Yeah, so it looks like we do have an untapped Stomping Grounds, shocking Todd Stevens, going down to 17. He's going to go ahead and play out a Voice of Resurgence. Ross is going to fetch down to 19 on Todd's end step. Probably going to get his Steam Vents untapped. Although actually he's going to get a Spell Snare. That's real good.
Yeah, that's really good for Ross because if Todd Stevens was able to get that to stick on the board, it would make all of Ross Merriam's counter spells a lot more worse from that point on, which is one of his big ways of interacting with fat creatures, which is what Todd Stevens' deck is.
Yeah. And not only just that, but it just makes the Twin deck as a whole a little bit worse because it's just designed to play at instant speed. Yeah,
the other thing too is the whole reason that being on the play is an advantage is because you get to start casting your things before your opponent does. But by Ross having that 1-mana interaction and Todd Stevens' first play being on turn 2, Ross is completely even on tempo, even though Todd was able to be on the play.
Yeah, and that's something, Spell Snare is very good at doing that. There's been some formats, be it Modern or Legacy, where Spell Snare is extremely powerful. It hasn't been so as of late, but I feel like we're getting back to the point where Spell Snare is very good.
Yeah. Well, luckily for Todd Stevens, the shields are down, and he's able to land this Knight of the Reliquary, which will now be a 4/4. So Ross won't be able to Lightning Bolt it. He can't counter it because it's already on the board, so he's going to be looking at maybe a roast.
Yep, roast or bust. Now, it does look like he does have Deceiver Exarch and Splinter Twin in his hand, along with another land. So Todd very well could just lose on the next turn if he doesn't keep that in mind.
Yeah, and just to harp on what I was saying before, I think Ross's expectation is that the Naya Company deck, it's mostly threats. It doesn't have that many answers. He's not going to have a lot of disruption, and so Ross still wants to be on the combo plan.
Yes. So we see Ross just plays the land and passes. Todd Stevens is going to attack with his Knight of the Reliquary and fetch the Windswept Heath that he played for the turn to pump it up to a 5/5.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big creature. One thing that's pretty amazing is the fact that Knight of the Reliquary is such an efficient, powerful threat, but it really doesn't see that much play in Modern. I mean, it's a great card. It is huge, but it really speaks to the power level of Modern because in this case, despite how big Knight of the Reliquary is, it may not even be good enough.
Yeah, there are so many ways to just kill your opponent outright that it's very rough to take advantage of it. Plus, Modern itself has moved into a spot where one of the premier removal spells is Terminate, and it just doesn't really matter.
Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like Ross was able to play a Deceiver Exarch and chose not to. So it seems like he feels like he has some time. And I believe he also has a Dispel in his hand, although I'm not 100% sure about that. So it looks like he's trying to set up a scenario where he can play his Deceiver Exarch and keep it protected.
Yeah, so we're just going to see a land go from Ross. He might just only have one of the creature portion of the combo in his hand.
And this is a good use of it. Now he gets to tap down Todd's biggest blocker and still have that Dispel available to keep his creature protected.
Absolutely. He's going to cast the Deceiver Exarch. Looks like he's tapping down the Knight of the Reliquary. I imagine we are in Todd's combat step.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how Todd wants to respond to this. He's probably going to want to tap and sack a land just because you might as well get the activation out of Knight of the Reliquary. But it'll be interesting to see if he wants to try to use a removal spell here or wait till later.
So it looks like he only has one removal spell in his hand. So if Ross does happen to have a Dispel for that Path to Exile and decides to go for it with Splinter Twin next turn, we could just see this match over quick 2-0 just as fast as it started.
Yeah. And so he's going for the path, and Ross is going to respond with the Dispel. And that's basically how Ross drew it up. I mean, he could have played the Deceiver Exarch last turn when he had 3 mana, but he very purposely waited until he had 4 mana so he would be able to have that Dispel up.
It's almost like he's played the deck before.
Yeah, it almost looks like he knows what he's doing. Just a little.
I'm sure he got the rule book from BBD on it. Let's not give Ross too much credit.
Yeah, BBD probably wrote an article and Ross read it and memorized every word.
So it looks like Todd is going to activate that Knight of the Reliquary, sacrificing his Sacred Foundry in response to the Deceiver Exarch trigger targeting it. And he's getting a Horizon Canopy just to give himself an out to try and find another either Path to Exile or Dromoka's Command.
Yeah, Horizon Canopy is really, really a great card. It's the only land that lets you draw a card. I mean, there's Desolate Lighthouse, which fills a similar role, but this one just does it a lot more efficiently. And this is going to be Todd's one chance to draw another removal spell.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see if he goes for it now or waits to see if Ross is going to just go for it with Splinter Twin next turn.
Yeah.
We are going to see an attack from that 4/5 Tarmogoyf in the meantime. It's going to knock Ross down to 8. He's not going to draw the card now. I think he's going to wait and see if Ross has it. But believe me, they always do.
Well, when you're Ross Merriam, you definitely always have it. So let's see what Todd can do here. Ross is threatening
so we just
lethal.
see a Sulphur Falls Splinter Twin targeting Deceiver Exarch. Todd Stevens is going to draw a card with his Horizon Canopy. Oh!
Oh, no. All lands.
All lands.
That was a rough one. Well, that was a pretty quick match, but I think that sort of showcases just a lot of the strength of the Blue-Red Twin deck is a lot of the proactive strategies aren't really that well equipped to beat the Twin deck. The Twin deck is just so flexible. It can play at the end of your turn. There's a lot of angles and sequences that it can kind of operate with. And, you know, Ross Merriam being the great pilot that he is, you know, he's just showing why he's someone who's always on the leaderboard.
Yeah, now, Ross didn't have another creature in his hand.
Yeah.
So had he not took that turn off and waited till he had Dispel back up to put the Deceiver Exarch on the battlefield, it's very likely that he just loses that game in another attack from Todd Stevens.
Yeah, but instead he waited, and it's like a wind-up punch.
Yeah.
You know, it's like he just winds it up for a little longer, and then there's nothing you can do about it when it comes at you.
Man, just being able to stop what your opponent's doing for 1 mana is very, very good in these Twin decks.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, I'm excited.